with our team and make sure we're good to go. Zoom working? Great. Well, again, thank you and welcome to Reno City Hall for the kickoff to our 2023 redistricting process. Appreciate you spending some time with us tonight and learning about this important process for our community. I'm Callie Wilsey. I'm the Director of Policy and Strategy for the City of Reno. And I'm joined here by Kimmy Shigatani, got it right. She's with Flow Analytics, which is an independent data analytics firm that will be consulting with the city throughout this process. We're going to learn a little bit more about their role in a minute. But tonight we are here to kick off this process. It's our first community meeting, and so thank you for spending time with us. Here's what you can expect tonight. We're going to give a presentation, maybe 15-20 minutes, but we're going to go through an overview of the presentation, the process, and why we're redistricting this year. We're going to talk about what the rules are for redistricting, what those requirements are, what we all need to be aware of. And we're going to, I'm hoping to make sure that everybody understands the timeline that we're working on, both the engagement timeline and the long-term timeline to transition from 5 to 6 wards. We're also going to talk about how you can give input through this process. And we're going to demo a new public input tool that will allow you to draw your own maps and submit them through this process. So just a few housekeeping we get going. This meeting is being recorded and we'll be posting it online. Reno.gov/redistricting is the site with all of the information for this process. So please use that tool. We will also be having questions at time for questions and comments at the end of our meeting tonight, both for those folks who are in person as well as our friends who are joining via Zoom or phone. For our virtual friends tonight, the chat function is on. We will not be taking the questions from there, but we will be keeping the log as a part of the public record. So if you have questions or comments that you want in there, feel free to keep them in there, and we'll store that record. And for our folks here, if you parked in the City Hall parking garage, we do have parking validation out on the security desk, so make sure you put your ticket in there before you leave. All right, let's started. So tonight we're kicking off a process to redraw our ward boundaries. The Reno City Charter requires that the city transitions from 5 to 6 wards in 2024. So right now we have 5 wards in the city, and we are scheduled to go to 6. What we'll be doing is taking the existing city limits and breaking it up into 6 different wards rather than 5. This process is really important as it determines which neighborhoods and communities are grouped together for the purposes of electing a council member. This process will affect residents within the current city limits. So we've gotten some questions. We did send out postcards to all residents within the city of Reno, but we also captured some residents who live in unincorporated Washoe County, and we apologize for the confusion. This process is not about annexation or expanding the city boundaries, so just want to clarify that. Our zip codes where we were pulling from to get everybody's addresses have a crossover between county and city, and so we captured some additional folks. So residents outside the current city limits will not be affected, and I just wanted to make sure we clarified that. Redistricting now. Usually this happens after a census year, and we did do that in 2021. So why are we doing it again? Well, back in 2016, our charter committee, which is a citizen committee, recommended from 5 to 6 wards. The thought process is reducing the number of people that each council member represents will increase the goal of being more responsive to our residents. This recommendation was supported by the legislature, and a bill was passed in 2017. That bill stated that that transition would occur in 2024, and that's what leads us here today. Change from 5 to 6 wards will change the composition of the Reno City Council. Just want to help help folks understand what this means. So right now, what you're seeing is the current composition. You have a mayor and an at-large council member. Both of those individuals who sit on the city council must live in Reno, and they are elected by the voters throughout the entire city. We have 5 ward members currently, and they must live in their ward within the city, and they're elected by the voters within their ward. When this transition is complete, that we will still have 7 members on the city council. The number doesn't change, but how it's made up does. We will still have a mayor elected by the entire city populace, but we will then have 6 ward members. The at-large council member position goes away. And so all council members will be required to live in their ward and will be elected by residents of their wards. One and a half years to complete fully. So right now we're going through the redistricting process to define where the new board boundary maps will be. The deadline to get those new boundaries to the Washoe County Registrar of Voters is September 1st. This deadline is necessary for the registrar to prepare for the 2024 election cycle. And there's more information about that on our website as well. So the maps will be by January by 2024, which were required by a charter for all purposes necessary to carry out the election. That's so candidates can file for office if they want to run, they know which ward they live in for campaigning purposes, and for all of our voters to know which ward that they will be voting in. The transition will ultimately be complete when the Ward 6 council member is sworn into office following the 2024 general election. Let's switch a little bit to the process of this actual redistricting that you're all here and tuned in for tonight. Our commitment is to make sure that we have a transparent, community-informed, and data-driven process. And there are several key fundamental pieces to our approach here. We're going to be driven by a set of redistricting principles that we're going to talk about shortly. We're going to use data and analysis to make sure that we are following all legal requirements. And it's going to be informed by you, our community. You're best informed where your community, your neighborhoods are, your communities of interest are. And so we want to hear from you to help draft these maps. As with the redistricting process in 2021, the city will be partnering with Flow Analytics, an independent firm, and they will be taking all the feedback that we hear from you guys and creating maps that meet all of those requirements to the best of their abilities based on the requirements. So Kimmy is going to be with you every step of the way through this process, and I hope you join me in welcoming her. But I'm going to turn the mic over to her for a portion of this presentation. She's going to talk more about the process and what they go through.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm Kimmy Shigatani with Flow Analytics. And so the first piece really is to walk through the process, and we see this as a community engagement process as well. So we're looking for community input and data collection. We would present a set of draft maps, council feedback on those maps, make any revisions, and then it goes. Probably one of the most devout pieces, I think, within this process, and they can sometimes be confusing. So there are 6 musts and 3 shoulds that we get to follow here. And so the city must be in compliance, obviously, with state, local, and any federal laws, including the Federal Voting Rights Act. Each ward should be nearly equal in population. It's difficult to get it exactly to the magic number that creates equal wards. But in this case, it must be as nearly as equal as possible. They must be geographically contiguous. I'll go over. Retain current council members who have existing terms that go beyond 2024. And this is really so that anybody that's been elected by the people of the city gets to fulfill that role. So nobody has part of their term cut off or anything else. We must solicit input from the community, and that's one of the reasons why we're here today. Any census data must be used as the data source. This should serve neighborhood integrity as much as possible. We should use of existing natural boundaries. And these can be rivers or lakes or culverts. They can also be things like major arterials or highways. I know that those don't seem exactly natural in the context of a city, They are there and they're important to generally to communities. And districts should be, wards, excuse me, should be as compact as possible. For total city population is 200,060. Ward should have a population of 44,027. $165. Oh, 2125. Nope. We're talking about people. We're not talking about the number of voters within each ward. We're just talking about people that were counted in the census in 2020. Also requires that it has a total deviation of 5% or less. Total deviation effectively is the largest positive number. We put them together to get a total deviation. 5% or less is absolutely achievable. Or less, and that's considered pretty. All right, 7 pages. So under redistricting, there are these 3 boundaries. I covered the natural and existing boundaries. They're geographically connected. So So it's the idea that the wards all connect to each other. And in this case, sort of moseying around the edges, wards should really be as compact as possible, so that people that live in those wards can get from one end of the ward to the other end without. So this is really around the Voting Rights Act and the demographics. So the Voting Rights Act is really around what we call majority-minority issue. So if there of a population that under the census is considered a minority group, so in this case, it would be Latinos, Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders, Asians, and Black or African Americans. Those 5 groups under the census are what they consider minority groups. So there is a ward that has a majority population of one of those groups, or can make a coalition of several groups that would create a 50% or more voting majority. We would consider that a majority minority district. Rights Act need to be drawn if they can be created. For the city of
just online, a little bit with the sound, if you'll bring in a little bit more.
Population is fairly dispersed across the city. And so one of the jobs of our demographers is to determine to draw a ward that would have a majority minority. One of the newer pieces for this, the 2020 census cycle at least, fairly broad term. And really what we're looking for is, where are your communities? And when we put them out, we put them on a map. What do those look like? And so I'll be demoing a tool at the end of this presentation intended for community members to be able to draw not only their own communities, but also wards if they're so interested. It's actually kind of a fun. And so, but communities of interest are really important to this process. And the reason being is because your community and what you define it as is not going to be something that I can define. Whether it's your neighborhood, whether it's where you shop, whether it's where you go to work, whether it's the neighborhood around where your kids go to school, all of those things are important in this process.
So let's talk about what this engagement process looks like. So our engagement process over the next few months is set up to be multiple phases. So tonight we're kicking off phase 1, where we have 3 community meetings scheduled. Tonight's the first one. Each of these meetings will be offered in a hybrid setting, and Spanish assistance will be available if needed. So let's walk through kind of what this looks like. Tonight we're kicking off the process, and we'll be asking for your input by submitting your own maps and helping us define neighborhoods and communities of interest. That's going to kind of be phase 1. We're going to be asking for that feedback to be submitted by June 22nd. The portal or the input needs to stop. We're kind of putting that out there because we need to develop the first round of maps. So we just kind of want to set an expectation and hope that we can get as much feedback by June 22nd. So when we come back to you on June 27th for our second community meeting, we've captured as much feedback to kind of help develop those first round of maps. So on June 27th, we will present that first round. The preliminary maps or draft maps is what you'll hear from me throughout that process. And then we'll ask for your input on those maps, as well as continuing to submit your own map ideas. And on July 14th is when that online portal will close. That feedback to revise the draft maps and prepare a final set of map options, which we'll present to you on July 27th. These maps will then move forward to City Council in August, and any feedback you have on those maps will be sent to Council for their deliberative public process in August. So that gives an overview of what the next few months looks like. Let's just take a closer look at June, since we've got quite a few meetings scheduled. So a series of meetings, we're going to discuss the process similar to what you're seeing tonight, but we want to make sure that we're out in the community and providing as much information as we can to get this process going. So we'll be visiting each of our neighborhood advisory boards in June. We'll also be holding a meeting in Spanish on June 14th. We'll be encouraging everyone to participate. We'll be there to answer questions, and we'll be providing and asking for your initial thoughts and feedback. Reno.gov/redistricting has the times, locations, and ability to sign up for Zoom where that's available. I'm going to plug to make sure you sign up for our newsletter so you can get the information about the upcoming things, if we add ones, dates, locations, times, etc. Because we some additional what we call drop-in sessions in between that second and third community meeting, and those will be throughout the community. So make sure you sign up for that newsletter to get that information. You'll be able to provide input several ways. You can attend any of these meetings that we've been talking about. We'll have the opportunity to provide public comment, feedback. So that's one option. You will be able to submit your input through the online public portal, and we are using Districtor. We will have this portal up and running by Monday, June 5th. We're working out a few of the kinks, making sure it works right for you, but by Monday, it'll be up and running. You can also email us your comments, and we'll make sure that they are part of the record. You can send those to redistricting@reno.gov. So I'm going to turn it back to Kimmy. She's actually going to demo this, talk to us a little bit more about the Districtor and show us how to use it.
Is not a typo. It is actually Districtor. That's how they intentionally did it. I think it has to do with some programming R related joke, and I don't know it, but that's what I understand. Because I have to look at the map and the mouse at the same time. So just bear with me. Okay, so this is what landing page, and right now you'll see it says deploy right up here because this is still the test version that we're working the kinks out of right now. This is some background. We have it both in English and Spanish. Okay. So the landing page is in both English and Spanish. Or just draw a community, and we can go over both. You would click here. And there's two ways you can look at this. So this paintbrush gives you the opportunity to select a color and you can fill in the map. Go to sort of design your own ward. And you'll see way over here on the side, there's a bar that progresses with the population balance. And so this will tell you when you get to the right population for each ward. So I can continue drawing here. Go down, that's a little too much. A little bit over, we can click on this eraser and just take those out. And you can make this larger or smaller. I tend to get a little heavy-handed with the erasers. So. Sure. And so you can then go through each and draw each of the 6 wards kind of as you see fit. There are no restrictions on this. You can draw 2 wards and then save it and leave it alone. You can draw all 6 wards. That's actually the most helpful for our demographers, is to have the full map. But even if you just draw 1 or 2 wards, it's helpful to get an idea of how that works. Some data layers here. And so these are data sets that have been sent to us by the city. And also, and we will have the existing 5 wards up as well. This is one of those kinks we're still working out. So that should be up here as well. And so you can see that there's a lot of neighborhoods. And so you can also zoom in to get a better look. And so when we talk about integrity, this overlay, this data layer becomes very helpful. But you've got other things in here too. You've got elementary school districts, middle school, and as you can tell, if I put on all of the data layers, it gets a little bit cluttered. So typically we would suggest just 1 or 2, just for ease of mapping. It gets a little cluttered otherwise. You can also show numbering if that's helpful. Typically, the numbering is determined by the city council at the end of the process. But that's entirely up to you. The population of each area, of each ward by race. And so you'll be able to get a sense of in the 2020 census data. You can pair them together or pick just one population. It's really entirely up to you and what you think is critical to this process. Working, so that's a good another workout. Larger spotlight for the population. So if we're looking at voting age population, it'll show you as you hover over what the voting age population is for each group. Well, if you're trying to create a district based on not just neighborhoods, but perhaps if you're looking for a Voting Rights Act majority minority issue, you could, in theory, use this to do that. So that's actually Districtor in terms of creating 6 wards in a nutshell. It's not a terribly complicated program. It's intended to be as simple to use as possible to be able to engage the community and so if you wanted to just draw your own community or your community of interest, you can do so here. You can have more than one community on a map. And then you would just take the paintbrush, and this map is obviously in color a little bit more than the other one, but it does effectively the same thing. It does not show you the population as the first one did. And the reason being is because your community of interest is your community. And so it's not about the size of that community so much what the boundaries are within the map and how that sits on the map. So the community building tool is really actually I can tell you that when you go to save your map, you will want to save it, and it will show up under these blocks, right under public gallery. You'll be able to see become public. You don't have to put your name on them. You can simply make up a nickname. Just each map is coded with a 6-digit number. So that's how, if Callie sees a map online and she'd like us to take a look at it and run it through our other program that we use for mapping internally, would simply give us that 6-digit number. We would go find it on Districtor, take it, pull it, and then do the analysis that we need to do internally. So, but all the maps will show up here. So if you don't like your map, you can always draw another one. It's a pretty simple process. So any questions about Districtor?
We'll have you come up to the mic here in just a quick second because we are at the end of the presentation. Can we go back to the slides? Last slide, please. Thank you. Well, thanks everybody. That is the presentation for tonight. So I know it's a lot of information, but we hope it explains more about what you can expect over the next few weeks and months, and why we're here tonight. Reminder that the information is online. We do want to allow for questions or comments tonight. We'll be capturing any feedback or comments that you have that we'll move forward in the process, but we're also happy just to answer questions. So as you're thinking, if you have any questions, I just want to provide some instructions. So if you're here in person and have comments or questions, I'm going to ask you to come up to the microphones. We need the microphones so our friends on Zoom can hear us. So it's kind of an important part for us here in the room. On Zoom, if you have a question or comment, please go ahead and click raise hand in that webinar control. It will pull you over. Same thing on the phone, it's *9. And we will kind of bounce around if there's somebody here in the room, I'll ask you to talk and I might just pick somebody on Zoom. You will unmute yourself when called upon, and we will get going. So thanks so much for being here tonight. If you have any questions, please come up to the microphone or let us know. Thanks. All right, let's go to first person here in the room. Thanks so much for being here.
Mic check. Mic, okay, perfect. William Mantle for the record. My question is for Districtor, seeing as how certain counselors are have their term extending beyond 24, how is that going to be represented on the map? So as drawing a map, we understand that this counselor is here and we need to include that within that map because they must stay within their ward, right? Their ward has to still be 4, 3, 2, 1, whatever, right? Thanks.
So typically how we address that is that we will ask for a pin on the map to indicate where they live when we're drawing draft maps. That information does not go forward to the public, if that makes sense. So the pins that are draft then come off of the maps, those draft maps go forward. We can let the city council know those two individuals are still in those wards.
Sure, but doesn't that prevent us from making educated maps for you guys? If we don't have that information present on that tool, then we're drawing maps without the right parameters. So you would just disregard portions of our maps.
We can talk about how to do it. Maybe in like a textual space. Yeah, are you? Come on up.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
One of the things that I had seen when the 2020 census was happening was they would look at either the census tracts or even maybe a little bit like census blocks where it doesn't give you the exact address of the elected official, but it says, here's like a 4-block area where the elected official lives. And this needs to be at least in whatever district it is that you're trying to create.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And I think we would likely look at census tract for this instance, only because census blocks sometimes are very small. And so,
And is that the address that's reflected on their original campaign filing form for reference, or their physical location present?
that is a city. Good question. That's a good question.
William, that's a good question. I would have to double check.
That's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you. Next.
All right, here we go. My name is Pavan Duan. I live in Ward 3. This is 3023. So I do know I'm very good at precinct maps. So once you redistricted all the map to create 6-4, are you guys going to change the precinct number? Like 1, the beginning of 1 is Ward 1, Ward 2, beginning of 2 is Ward 2, etc. You have like 6 wards, so I go change the precinct number.
So the answer is yes. So what happened, it could happen on the precinct level. What happens is we provide our ward boundaries to the Washoe County Registrar of Voters, and then they draw the precinct maps for the election. And there are a lot of rules that go into how to create those precincts. And actually the registrar provided some of those details, and there's a memo that she provided, and it's on our redistricting page if you're interested in reading a little bit more about that process and what goes into it. So yes, the precinct numbers for voting could change.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Let's go ahead and take a question or a comment from Zoom. Wanda, are you there?
Okay.
Hey,
I'm
Wanda, we can
unmuted.
hear ya.
You can hear me now. Okay. I'm just wondering, are you guys taking into consideration down in South Reno, we have a lot of drainage districts. And I know currently we have 2 wards down here because a council member used to live here and he no longer is on the council. And so our Ward 3 representative didn't show up at our meetings, but Ward 2's did. And we've been in many meetings trying to work with it. Are they looking at possibly redistricting some of that since the ward member or council member no longer lives in this district or is no longer required down here? Is that something that I can include in my maps, or that I can send an email about requesting, or how do I go about that?
Yes, Wanda, you can. The situation you're talking about is that individual no longer is on the city council, and so that address or space no longer plays a role in the boundaries. So please submit your feedback on your neighborhood.
Is the drainage districts or the water flood things a valid concern to express to you? It's not population, it's not all this stuff, but just to be taken into consideration.
Absolutely.
That, thank you.
You're welcome. We'll take one more from Zoom and then we'll come back to the room. Dave, how are you this evening?
Am I here now?
We can hear you now.
Okay, thank you very much. I have questions similar to the first speaker. I'm a little confused when you say that you must retain current council members with existing terms that extend beyond 2024. Aren't you required to retain all the council members?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So in consultation with the legal team in reviewing it, the difference here in this process compared to the one in 2021 is that these really are impacted by the election. So those terms ultimately expire, the other terms. So Ward 2 and Ward 4 council members have been elected through 2026. But the other council members' terms expire in November 2021. And so those could be drawn differently in theory.
Well, I think that that's an incorrect legal assessment, because this takes effect January 1st of 2023, not November. So in that time between January and November, let's say you take out Ward 3 and he's no longer in Ward 3's district. Who represents them from January to November?
So the existing, based on my conversations with our legal team, the existing representation stays in place until, so the maps take effect in January for purposes of the election. For all other purposes, they take effect upon the swearing in of the Ward 6 council member.
Okay, I don't think I agree with that, but I understand what you're saying. Because how do you run for a ward if it's not there? Anyway, that's not for you to answer, but I think I think they have to protect all the council members. And on that same issue, are the council members' addresses secret? I mean, why, he was right. How do we draw maps if we don't know where they live? Why is this a secret?
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair question, and we'll talk with Kimmy and Flo to figure out how best to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go into the room.
Hi. Hello. William Poochert, Ward 5. I have a couple of technical questions, and this might be something you defer to the voter registrar. Will current precincts, their numbers may change, but will current precincts stay intact? So like my precinct now, the way it's drawn, will that stay intact the way it is? Or could that move?
I think the precincts could change based
Okay.
on my
the
understanding of how that
geographical
works.
boundaries of it?
Yes, because of the geographical boundaries of how our wards intersect with other, like the school board of trustees boundaries, and there are some rules on how the registrar does that. But I would probably defer to her a little bit more specifically to understand.
The other question I had with regards to precinct, right now, the 1000s are Ward 1, 2000s are Ward 2, up to 5000s, Ward 5. I think most of, or all of Sparks is all the 6000s precinct. Are we going to be taking Sparks precincts and they're going to be moving up? I'm just curious about that because, I mean, the precincts have always reflected the Reno 1000 through the 5000, have always reflected the Reno ward system.
I will have to ask.
And curious, you said on the compactness of the districts, is that federally mandated?
The compactness
Yeah.
of federally mandated.
Like you have to have a district that's not spaghetti.
So it is federal law that the districts cannot be, this is going to get a little complicated. So when we talk about districts that have that sort of spaghetti looking look, a lot of times we'll refer to them as districts that have been gerrymandered or
Right.
gerrymandered, depending on what part of the country you're from. And so there are 3 sets of criteria that we have to meet in order to determine whether or not something's been gerrymandered. And so it's not quite, when we talk about compactness, you really just want to keep communities whole. And that's kind of the basis of compactness. And so it is a federal standard that's been upheld by the courts. It's not codified in law, if that's.
Because if they were, you wouldn't have congressional districts that were gerrymandered, right?
Well, because.
That's why I asked.
Yeah, and compactness can be measured. And so that's another thing. There are tests to measure the compactness of a district. We typically don't do them because generally speaking, if something is visually compact, that's typically what the courts look for.
Thank you very much.
One more in the room here. Hi.
My question is with regards to the Districtor software, is that the only software that's going to be available to be uploading maps? Or if we were to come across any other redistricting software, we would be able to upload it?
Yeah, there are other redistricting tools. I know Dave's redistricting app often comes up. And so if you create a map on any of those tools like Dave's, and you can either send us, I think you can either download it as a CSV file, or you can send us the link to it, or you can send it to the city rather. The city will send it to us and we'll be able to analyze it and kind of print it out.
Okay, thank you so much. And then I have just one more question. This one is more with regards to the whole gerrymandering thing. So One of the ways that there also is gerrymandering is with prison gerrymandering. And I know that the state here in Nevada, when they were doing the state and congressional maps, they chose to reallocate people that are incarcerated to their, what they're considered as their home community. And so I just want to know if the city is considering doing that as well, because in 2021, we were advocating for the city to end prison gerrymandering. But because of the timeline and everything, we understood that that was maybe not possible. So I just wanted to see if that's something that we could potentially do, because there is a constituent in Ward 4 who, you know, did serve some time in Ely. But, you know, if they were not reflected in Ward 4 because they were incarcerated at the time and they're no longer there, Ward 4 is currently where they're at now. They're now free. So just wanted to see if the city was going to be considering or even entertaining that. Thank you.
Thanks so much for the question. Definitely understand the issue and have followed that policy question around the state. So our redistricting principles that council has adopted has specifically identified the 2020 census numbers. Unfortunately, we don't have that level of detail to kind of separate it. And what that would take for us is to go back to council to get those principles kind of readdressed for that to occur.
Thank you. The only thing that I would add to that is the state demographer had all that information for when they were reallocating people for the state redistricting. So maybe we're contacting with the state demographer.
Thank you. All right, let's go to the Zoom. Let's go to Judy. I'm not sure if Wanda and Dave are back in or they just still have their hands up. So Judy, how are you tonight?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Awesome. So Judy Rott and I live in Ward 1. So obviously Councilman Breckus is going to be at the end of her term. So she is not going to be included in, or her residence is not going to be included in how Ward 1 is drawn. Is that correct?
So, where Councilmember Breckus lives in the city of Reno, so her address will be in one of the wards that are drawn.
Right, but her current resident doesn't necessarily mean where Ward 1 will be.
That's correct.
Okay, with Councilman Devin Reese being the at-large council member, is where he is currently residing going to affect where Ward 6 is, or is Ward 6 just a kind of a free-for-all and no current council member has to be in it?
Yeah, the second option. So we don't know where Ward 6 will be. That is the goal of this process and engaging with the community and learning more about boundaries of neighborhoods and communities of interest and bringing those maps forward to you. Wherever a person, including a city council member, sitting city council member, if they are in that ward that is up for election, they will have the opportunity, like any other person, to file for office if they so choose and run a campaign.
Okay, so the only two current council members that when the redistricting is done, they have to live within the borders are going to be for 2 and 4, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. I'm not seeing any other. Oh, we've got somebody coming up. Anybody else is on Zoom or on the phone, please hit that raise hand button. Otherwise, we're going to come here in the room. Thanks for being here tonight.
Harsh. I have a turned on. It is. Turn it off when I was trying to do something. Okay, thank you. Do we have currently majority minority board at this? Or are we feeling like we might have one based on?
So currently there is no ward with a majority minority seat. And I think that our demographers are taking a look at it. Typically we'll have them sort of blind draw to see if they can create one. But the population is fairly dispersed across the city. So we're not, because we couldn't draw one in 21, I don't know if we'd be able to draw one now.
Okay. This This seems extremely complicated. And so we're all going to go out and we're going to draw like maps. I would just like to know, do you kind of put them on top of each other? And does it just work? You know, you have the experience and it just works.
So typically, actually, what we do is we can pull down the maps that are submitted and we run them through a program to be able to get the statistics for that specific map. So we would be able to say this map is over deviation or under, or just those kinds of things that are important based on the criteria that we have to work with. So that's step one of the process. We send all of those to the city because they're part of the public record. And so that's kind of how that goes. Typically, if there is a map that starts to gain traction, in my experience, particularly with Districtor, at these kinds of meetings or at the neighborhood association meetings, you have the opportunity to say, we think that map 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the map that best represent our neighborhood or our community. And we would like to see that map elevated. And that's sort of part of that public comment process.
Is there any opportunity of moving the next public meetings to, say, McKinley Park because of?
No, thank you so much for the question. So for the community meetings, the reason we've chosen it here is because of the technological capabilities. However, so a couple of things to note. We're going all to the NABs in June. And then between that second and third meeting, we're hosting other meetings and we'll definitely be looking at McKinley for what we call drop-in sessions. So not everything will occur here at City Hall. We're going to be out in the community doing other sessions and meetings as well. So these are not the only opportunities.
Hi, my name is Candy Green, and just somebody had asked a question that they had said, how can they find where the person lives? Washoe County assessor records, they're all there if they own a home. So.
Thank you. All right, I am not seeing anybody else on Zoom. Are there any more questions in our room?
I'd like to ask one more. William Mansell, again, for the record, Ward 3. If the council does not come to consensus by the September 1st deadline, I think you gave, what does that mean? What does that look like if that were to happen? Because do they have to approve the maps twice in a row, similar to an ordinance or whatnot?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the process is that it does take 2 actions of council. That's because it's adopted via an ordinance. So the first meeting in August is scheduled for ordinance introduction, and the second meeting in August is scheduled for ordinance adoption. It is not a simple majority vote. The maps have to be adopted by a 5/7 vote. So it's a supermajority according to our charter. William, it's a good question on how. We would probably seek legal guidance and direction from council at the point in which if they reach a stalemate or things cannot move forward. Okay, please.
All right, so we do have minority majority districts already in City of Reno. Is Ward 3 controlled by Miguel Martinez. So we do have it. They're serving in the Northeast Reno to Midtown, east of Midtown, West Avenue, and then over here.
So Councilmember Martinez does represent the current Ward 3, but none of our wards are minority majority according to the population statistics. You're okay, absolutely. That's why we're here today.
Following up on a question with regards to the map, since they're saying there's going to be like potentially hundreds or so, is there any plan to like reduce and say these are like the final 4 or something like that? It might have been discussed, got here a little bit late, so just wanted to see if you can address that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take that one. So we will do a preliminary set of maps So we're going to take all the feedback we get over the next few weeks and create 3 or 4 preliminary maps based on what we hear. On June 27th, we'll introduce those to the community and ask for feedback on those. And then we will revise those based on more feedback that we get. And then July 27th, we will present the revised final maps.
Question.
Okay.
More. So for if you create a majority, that's really difficult for the city of Reno. Like if you were expanded to these parks to create one whole district, I think that will work. But Valley, it doesn't work. Valley could be part of city of Reno. Some Valley were in city of Reno. I think that one will create a minority. Some Valley to up to new.
Thanks for the feedback. All right. Going once. Anybody else on Zoom? Going twice. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate you guys participating and being here tonight. If you have any follow-up questions after, please redistricting@reno.gov or a phone number. So thanks so much.